Coming up next on Texas Parks and Wildlife, the Battleship Texas, the only surviving warship to serve the U.S. Navy in both World Wars, withstood the attack of enemy submarines, artillery, and suicide planes. Yet the greatest threat to her survival proved to be time, the elements, and neglect. For years, work has been underway to save the Battleship Texas and restore her to a stable condition. We'll take a look at some of the work that's been done on the battleship and meet some of the men who served on her during World War I and World War II.
Don't forget my seat.
I want to tell you one story that is exactly the truth.
Witness the effort to restore this National Historic Landmark and the return of the Battleship Texas.
Texas Parks and Wildlife, a television series for all outdoors.
There will not be another. She is the last of her kind. She was at one time the most powerful, the most dangerous warship afloat, and she's the Texas.
It was the luckiest ship in the world. During all of the career of this battleship, only one man was killed in action.
My grandfather was on it in 1923, and my father was on it during World War II.
I'm Louis Lotito, Seaman Second Class.
My father has talked a lot about the Texas, and also a lot about that it was being left to decay and it wasn't being taken care of.
For the job she did for the country, they should go out of their way just to keep it afloat and say, that ship did a lot for us, even though they didn't participate in it, which they should thank God they didn't have to participate in it.
There has to be some kind of money or donations. There has to be something that can be done. I'm sure there can be volunteer efforts to raise money to keep this kind of thing going. These are very, very special things.
Well, we made a long-term commitment here when the restoration began. Actually, we made a long-term commitment when the ship came under the stewardship of the State Park System in 1983. This is a symbol of a lot of things for us Texans, and our commitment is everlasting, you might say.
The Battleship Texas was built in the era of big ships and big guns. Her 10 14-inch guns made her at one time the most powerful warship in the world. In World War I, she sailed with the British Grand Fleet. The Texas became the Navy's first aircraft carrier when an airplane was successfully launched off Turret 2. In 1925, the Texas went to dry dock for modernizations. She emerged as flagship of the Atlantic Fleet. December 7, 1941. Japanese planes attacked Pearl Harbor, sinking or disabling 19 ships, including 5 battleships. The old Battleship Texas, half a world away, became one of the few remaining battleships left in the Navy as America entered World War II. She was there for the first major U.S. engagement of Nazi forces at the invasion of North Africa. She was there on D-Day, the Normandy invasion, providing bombardment at Omaha Beach. With victory imminent in Europe, the Texas was ordered to the Pacific to face the Japanese. At Iwo Jima, she spent 2 weeks at general quarters, firing over 900 rounds from her 14-inch guns. At Okinawa, she spent over 50 consecutive days at general quarters, and her big guns fired over 2,000 rounds. After the war, the aging battleship was given to the state of Texas as a memorial in 1948. Berthed at San Jacinto Battleground State Park near Houston, the Battleship Texas became the responsibility of the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department in 1983. Before any repair work commenced, extensive research on the history and the condition of the ship was initiated to guide the restoration.
As well as the pantry.
First coming aboard, the vessel was in seriously deteriorated condition. There was numerous holes in the ship, both in lower hull and upper hull, which permitted ingress of seawater and weather. Primary job and a constant battle was simply to keep water from coming into the vessel. It was almost a weekly exercise to stop a leak in the ship, keep her from filling. Over 20% of the double bottom was in free communication to the sea. The ship was effectively sunk.
Extensive corrosion and deterioration was found throughout the ship, especially in the lower levels. The scope of the damage was so extensive that the only recourse was to move the ship to dry dock for repairs.
How many do I need? Got Ralph?
Got Ralph, got Fabian. Jeff's gonna be up there and take this fellow with you.
Even if the worst should occur, we won't sink the ship, nor will we capsize her. We just have to lie alongside a pier someplace and have the divers plug the hole that caused the flooding. Are there any questions? At 5 o'clock, we'll set sea detail. In other words, go to your stations and we'll be ready at that point to get underway.
CR, can you put all the pressure you had a start line up? We all set back in. Okay, gentlemen, when you're ready, back them full, straight out. Let's go.
For over 40 years, the 34,000-ton battleship sat in the mud of the Houston Ship Channel. Moving her would not be easy.
Everybody stop at 3 feet. In a minute. When y'all get to your position and everybody's ready in the back, well, let me know.
After 7 hours of pulling, it seemed the ship would never budge.
What I was told was it's going to be a long day. That's what the bridge told me about 20 minutes ago.
The ship found an obstacle in the water of unknown exact nature.
Is there a possibility that she is stuck in her own impression in the mud since the ship is wider at the middle?
I would approximate this to, say, a declivity in the bottom, rooted out by the ship. And it was necessary to pull the ship out of this hole and over residual debris after the vessel.
Now all the 78-year-old battleship had to do is stay afloat for the long trip along the ship channel and down Galveston Bay to the Todd Shipyard dry docks on Galveston Island. During the tow, the crew tried to keep pace with the leaks, pumping out water as fast as it came in. By the time she reached dry dock, the Texas cleared the slip at the shipyard by only 6 inches. Keeping a ship in dry dock is expensive, so the first priority was to plug all the leaks in the hull.
The work in Todd consisted and was limited rather severely to work that we simply could not perform in the slip here. Specifically, such items as the replacement of exterior hull plate, which obviously can only be done on a dry dock. Another of the problems which we simply could not have handled ourselves was the removal of the concrete overlayment from the main deck. That's concrete, rather than coming out in 6x6 slabs, came out in 9x9 inch chunks and was immensely labor intensive.
Overhaul of the ship's hull was also a massive undertaking. Each hole had to be located and repaired. The hull was covered with a layer of barnacles and oysters that had to be chipped through before the holes could be patched. 335,000 pounds of metal was replaced to regain the watertight integrity of the hull. She was then primed and painted the color of her last active duty, the dark blue camouflage of the Pacific Fleet. Before the Battleship Texas was modernized, she featured 2 cage masts. These were replaced in 1925 with 2 tripod masts, which housed the battery control rooms.
Tower on the main mast was a very substantial piece of work. This structure initially was extremely light, and due to difficulty of access was rather poorly maintained. The shipyard undertook to actually decapitate the ship. The tripod was cut through right round and together with the paired wing wall frames on the dry dock. This house was picked, moved forward of the ship, and set down on the pontoon top. The yard's naval architect almost had a stroke. It's the first time that anything had ever been welded to that pontoon top. He was very jealous of the dry dock. But for the Texas, they did it.
Below the main battery control of the forward tripod mast is the navigating bridge. Off the coast of southern France, the navigating bridge saw the most infamous day in the history of the Texas.
Well, we were in the northern France invasion to Normandy, and then we were called over for Cherbourg when some troops were boxed in further inland. So at that time, our guns couldn't elevate enough to reach the men that were trapped inland. So they flooded the blisters on one side of the ship to give us the added elevation. And by doing that, of course, we were able to fire further inland and break the fellows out of their encirclement. So it helped considerably. But at the same time, when we moved into Cherbourg to get in close enough, the German rail guns caught us in their crossfire.
Near misses were so close that the deck of the ship, main deck, was just as wet as if you'd washed it down with a hose. The splashes were coming and splashing up over the deck as we dodged in and out of these shells.
Everyone was scared. I looked around me, and there was a Marine orderly, which was the captain's orderly. He was standing over aft part of the bridge, and he and a correspondent were trying to light each other cigarettes, and they were shaking so badly because these shells were exploding all around, and we knew the next one might be ours. And ironically, I looked up, and right in front of that porthole was the Captain Gilman, and he turned real pale, and he said, "I think we're going to get it." And the shells went off port and starboard, and it was pretty hairy, and it was loud, and our guns was shooting, and the concussion from those guns was terrific. And I could see on the PPI, which is a radar scope, that a large vessel, which looked like it would be a battleship, was just 1 point off our starboard bow. And I screamed at the captain about it, and he stuck his head in and told his helmsman hard right rudder. And right after the helmsman gave it hard right, when the ship was hit.
And one shell landed on the conning tower just below the bridge. And the conning tower is concrete and steel. So when the shell came in on the top of the conning tower, the explosion went upward, blowing the deck out of the bridge. It killed the helmsman immediately and wounded a number of other crewmen.
Chris Christensen was sitting there on the stoop steering the ship, and as I turned away, I said, "That was a close one, wasn't it, Chris?" He said, "It sure was, Chaplain." And I came on back and picked up the mic, and just as I picked it up and started to speak about that close hit we had of the near miss, boom, bang. My microphone flew out of my hand, my helmet flew off my head, a piece of shrapnel came through. These decks were turned up like you'd open a sardine can and fold it back, and everything went black.
There was, I think, 15 people hurt, but only about 7 real seriously. And Christensen was our helmsman. He died within about 60 seconds.
Oh, it was very saddening because the young man that got killed in there, he was in my division, in 7A division. He just transferred from 7A division into the quartermasters. I don't think he was there a week or so, and he got killed, and it was very sad. And he was a very nice, he was not only a shipmate, he was a good friend of ours in our division, and that was a pretty good jar.
After the battle, another hit was discovered in the bow. A 9-inch German shell failed to explode and lodged in a warrant officer's stateroom. The shell was defused and removed when the Texas returned to England for repairs. Thus began the reputation of the battleship Texas as the lucky ship. At the end of World War II, the Texas bristled with anti-aircraft guns. Before releasing the ship in 1948, the Navy stripped most of these guns from the decks of the Texas. Part of the restoration plan was to restore the exterior to the condition of her last service. At the dry dock, splinter screens and gun emplacements were refitted on the decks. Several anti-aircraft guns were acquired and restored to locations of previous service and past battles.
At one time, there was suicide planes. If the suicide planes were flying over, they all were going off at the same time, simultaneously. And everybody was looking for the object, one object. And everybody says, "I got him," or "He got him." We didn't care who got him, as long as somebody got him. Because if it came, especially where I was was scared to death up there,
I saw a jet plane come down on the carrier Swanson, suicide, in the South Pacific. I saw a jet plane go over by me too. But then there was a Marine Casera plane came over and put him right down in the water.
After 14 months at dry dock, the battleship was moved back up the ship channel. During the tow, crews checked the bottom every hour for leaks. This time, the holds were relatively dry.
It's dry. Very good.
And the Texas passed her home berth at San Jacinto as a proud and dignified ship again. The Texas then docked at Greens Bayou for pierside repairs. Each time the Texas was moved, personnel from the Public Lands Division found themselves moonlighting as deckhands and longshoremen. Docking a battleship is not the easiest endeavor, especially when that ship is 573 feet long. Once the ship was properly situated, the crew tied her off to begin the second phase of her restoration.
Greens Bayou was used primarily for 2 jobs. The installation of the wood deck on the vessel, which continued and continued. The other was the installation of the monopile attachments, which was essentially light work and could be handled pierside. At the same time, of course, ship's crew and the ship's forts turned to begin renovation of the hull. So while other folks were working on the outside, Texas folks were working on the inside.
deck was white, wood white, wasn't painted. We had to scrub that deck every Saturday with sand and a holy stone. We call it a holy stone, with a fire brick.
And the sailors on topside, which we call deck apes, they used to holy stone these decks. Bosun's mate would stand over them like the good Lord himself. And those guys would be standing there going back and forth, and they'd had that floor so that you could eat off of it.
When the Battleship Texas returned to San Jacinto Battleground State Park, her berth featured 4 new monopiles that would attach to the ship and secure her in the years ahead. To many people that day, the ship looked great, and the restoration appeared to be over.
A question we're often asked is the ship fixed now? Very good question, a simple question. Unfortunately, I think without a simple answer. One would assume that after the time and money that's been spent here, that certainly one could expect that she would be fixed. Certainly, tremendous work has been accomplished. The superstructure, the work in keeping the ship intact has been done. But what we face is a continuing tremendous maintenance effort in keeping the investment here intact, keeping the ship itself in tip-top shape and something that everyone can be proud of.
Restoration of the interior of the ship continues as crews strive to open up more of the ship to the public. Research is also ongoing to ensure the restoration of the Texas is as accurate as possible.
A lot of our folks who have worked so hard and diligently on this project are proud of the fact that one can't see all that has been done. And you look at it after the project is complete and say, well, what's the big deal? It looks so natural. That's the point, that some of these things where work has been accomplished can't be easily seen by the untrained eye.
Essential to the restoration are the numerous groups and individuals that volunteer their time to tackle various jobs around the ship. The work these volunteers complete saves funds for the battleship, which can be used in other phases of her restoration.
As I pondered my remarks today, I recalled a story about 2 years ago. A young man that had to be somewhere around 8 to 10 years old stopped him and he said, "Mister, does this place belong to you?" And I was particularly interested in the senator's comments as he tried to struggle for some words, and he said, "Yes, sir, it does. And it belongs to you, and it belongs to everybody else out in this audience." So I hope when we're able to open the ship here at 1 o'clock, as you walk on board, you'll think about that. That ship belongs to everyone in this audience, everyone in the state of Texas, and anybody that walks aboard it.
I often get shot down for equilibrating the ownership of this fine old vessel to the owning of a vintage Bentley. You can't understand it till you own one. Yes, it is a luxury. This is a classic. This is the last dreadnought. All the rest have been turned into tin cans and razor blades. This is the last of them, babe. There won't be any more.
Maybe it's because it's a symbol. You know, it's a symbol of our freedom. It's a symbol of what we stand for as a country. It's a symbol of what we stand for as a state and all of our heritage that goes from the tip of our toes to the top of our heads. Maybe that's it. But I do know Even though perhaps it can't be explained well, it's real nevertheless. She'll get you if you don't watch out.
Oh, it's nothing like it to come back after 1945. Now, how long has that been? And, you know, to see it, it makes you just feel good all over, you know. This is part of my life, almost for 43, 44, and 45. This is part of my life.
She was our home to us for years. The crew, we all got along very nice. We all shared the same problem, the loneliness of being away from home and our family. It wasn't the fear that maybe something would happen to us. We didn't even think of that. We knew the almighty Texas was going to stand by us and protect us, which she did. She did a beautiful job.
These things are part of America. They're part of me. They're part of you. They're just part of everybody. And when they're gone, they're gone.
I love that ship. That was my home in 1917.
Everybody gets old, but old don't mean nothing. Old is beautiful.
For additional information, including how to obtain a videocassette copy of this program, call us at 1-800-792-1112. The wild side of Texas can be enjoyed all year long by subscribing to Texas Parks and Wildlife magazine. Call 1-800-937-9393.